Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Performance Mindset Podcast. I'm sitting here today with my friend Isar Meitis, and pretty cool dude. He's been a CEO 4 times. He is really going deep into AI. He is light years ahead of me, but I thought it'd be great to sit down for a conversation to try to catch me and some others up and then maybe learn a bit about his experience. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. It's been a while since we chatted, and I'm really on a personal level excited to chat with you. So that's going to be fun.
I think we chatted when I was actually thinking about having a podcast, and we were chatting about that last time we connected.
You are correct. And I gave you some tips and ideas. You're right.
That's what it was. So thank you for that.
So I'm partially guilty in what's happening right now. That's
I think I'm close to 80 episodes now.
Oh, wow.
So, which is pretty cool.
Impressive.
Yeah. So thanks for that.
Sure.
So tell the audience, if they don't know you, like, tell us a little bit about you and, how you kind of got there and, what you're up to today.
Sure. I was born about 1,000 years ago. No, I'm
in kidding. A galaxy far away.
Professional experience. I started my career as an F-16 pilot. I then was in flight instructor in the Israeli Air Force Academy for 2 years. I left that and joined a small tech startup that was in its early stages. That's what got me to the US. So we came here, 4 of us, to open a US subsidiary of the company that we were running in Israel. And we basically took kind of like the core team. So I was doing sales and marketing. The CEO came over, the CTO came over, and the head of training came over. So the 4 of us came over here to claim our part of the US economy. And it was very interesting because it was training and simulation and defense contracts and stuff like that. And all of us were foreign nationals. So from an access to places and stuff like that was an interesting experience. But that company went public and I was there for almost 10 years. I then did an executive MBA here at Crummer in Rollins College.
Oh, go Rollins.
Yes. Left that company, started my own startup. I was trying to reinvent affiliate marketing, and about 4 years and $3.5 million of investor money later, it didn't work. I had to shut that company down. But in the process, very early on, actually, about 6 months in, my main investor, who's still a dear friend of mine to this day, came to me and said, "Hey, listen, so he was the founder and CEO of the largest wholesale travel company in the US. And he said, hey, we know how to do wholesale, but have no clue about e-commerce. And you seems to know about this stuff. How do you like to run our e-commerce department?" I'm like, "Well, you're writing me pretty big checks to do the other thing." And he's like, "Yeah, you're smart. You can do both." So I wasn't smart enough, but I did do both for about 3.5 years. And like I said, the startup faded into nothing eventually. But the startup that I was running within his company, so basically I opened a subsidiary that was a tech startup disconnected from the main company. So I had my own product team, my own development team, my own marketing, my own sales, my own call center, basically like a company within the company. And we grew that to just over $100 million in sales in like 5 or 6 years.
Wow.
Then the big company got sold. So the company that owned Last Minute Travel got sold. We went through a very interesting merger. So private equity bought us and our 2 largest global competitors, so number 1, 2, and 3 in the world of wholesale, and merged us into one company. And that was interesting in one word. Anybody who's been through a large merger knows what I'm talking about. Great school, but I hated the output. So I'm a startup kind of guy, and I like running fast and having a small team of ninjas. And this became way too corporate for me. So after about 2 years, I left and started a company that helped businesses grow sales and communities through podcasts and live talk shows online. That's kind of when you and I had that, how do I start a podcast kind of conversation?
Yeah.
Because we did that at scale for multiple businesses. Had my business partner back then backstab me in 2022. And I basically had to leave the business. That was around October of 2022. And then I'm like, okay, what do I want to do when I grow up? And then ChatGPT came out. And like, oh, this is cool. And being a startup kind of entrepreneur and be a geek, I dove all in, and I know a lot of people who are CEOs. And I'm an investor of several different businesses. I'm on boards of several other businesses, and I mentor a couple of CEOs. So it all kind of rolled organically to me consulting to them. Started the podcast and the AI business transformation course in April of 2023, and haven't looked back. So
It's
it's
been that long. It's been 2 years. It's going to be
yeah,
two
it's been
years.
over two
Wow.
years. That's been my full-time job, is training companies and executives and consulting to businesses on how to implement AI. So that's kind of like, on a nutshell, my last 25 years of my life.
Wow. Like a few things though. I find that most everybody I talk to has kind of like a winding kind of path, like that. And, you say, well, this one worked, this one didn't work, this one faded. But like all of those things together kind of lead you to, it's kind of like an evolution.
Oh yeah,
So
listen, it's a school of life, right?
right.
You don't know how to run a business if you don't run a business. Like, you can read as many books as you want and go to whatever executive training you want, but without actually running a few businesses, you will never know. And seeing the good, the bad, and the ugly, and getting the scars from it may not be the most efficient way, but I think it's part of the journey.
What I find is interesting is you chatted a little bit about the podcast business, in kind of not no longer being involved with that in 2022, but then by April 2023, here you roll with another one, and how quickly you're just like, all right, like on to the next thing. What can I innovate? And I don't see that going away anytime soon. I mean, AI is just incredible. I mean, how did that come to you? Like that this is the next thing, or are you just naturally
As
inquisitive?
soon as I started playing with it, like literally, again, I left the business in October of 22. In November, end of November, ChatGPT came out, and I had time because I didn't have a job. And so I started playing around, and I'm like, oh, this is interesting. And then you start thinking in your head, oh, I can use it for this, I can use this for that. And you start talking to your friends. Most of them never heard about it yet because it just came out. And like, what do you mean it can write for you and understand your emails? Like, that's what I mean. Like, you can do all these things. And like, okay, can you come and show us? And then I started doing these workshops to companies and so on. So it was very obvious to me very early on. And I was using AI tools before that. Like, we were using, in the podcasting world, we were using the script to do all our stuff, which is
Yeah.
an AI tool. And we were using some of the early writing tools, which Jasper, that back then was called Jarvis or something like that. And then
Oh
they
yeah, I've heard of
rebranded.
that. Yeah.
So we started playing with AI tools before like the ChatGPT moment. So I was very aware that these capabilities exist and are evolving. But obviously, what happened when ChatGPT came out changed literally everything. So I I I dove in very, very early. And like I said, by April, I was teaching courses to CEOs of companies, and so and I still do. And it's amazing to me, by the way, that in now March of 2025. I can't believe I'm saying that, but we're already in March. Like, the year haven't started like 2 days ago, and it's March already. But in
Uh,
March, in March of 2025, there's still a huge amount of people that either haven't used AI at all, or like, yes, I kind of dabbled with it, and I wrote a few things with like ChatGPT, but that's it. And that's the majority. Like, most people are there.
I think the easiest thing people can do is create their own GPT. I mean, that's like super low hanging fruit that, I did about a year and a half ago, because I have a very Amy way of speaking with lots of emojis and lots of uppercase, lowercase, and that's just how I speak. And so when I was using ChatGPT in the beginning, they'd be like, let's dive into this. And, it was just very obvious that it was super robotic. And
Yeah, yeah,
so as soon as I was able to go and like plug in my voice and come up with this whole like personal like writing tool, I'm still writing everything and then I'm still refining them.
yeah.
But it's incredible all the different tools. Like, and you don't have to use Chat GPT.
Of course.
There's so many different tools. Like, there's some people in commercial real estate, there's ones that make flyers now and brochures and create images. And I mean, what are some of the most interesting applications you're seeing in like AI?
Wow. So there's two different universes for me that I play
Yeah.
with AI. One is what provides most value to companies, and one is what's most cool and exciting. And they may not align, right? Sometimes they do,
Yeah, that
but in
makes
many
sense.
cases, like, oh my god, this is freaking awesome! Like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. I'm like, okay, but how do I make money with this? Like, I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah.
So there's these two things, but I think on the business side, I will, if you don't mind, I'll go a little foo-foo for a
You
second,
can go
or not
totally
foo-foo, but
foo-foo.
just
Yeah.
instead of answering on the use case, I will say that I think the thing that provides the most amount of value to businesses is the opportunity to reevaluate the business as a whole.
Mm.
So what I mean by that is, from a strategic perspective, if you value the business you're in, whether you're the owner or the CEO or the people in the trenches, if you value the business you're in, you have to think of what will this do to your industry, to your business, to your niche, to your clients, because it will. Like, it may be very little impact and like, okay, all good. Or it may be, holy shit, my business is going to go away in the next 12 to 18 months. At least the way I know it.
Right.
And you can put your hand in the sand and hope for the better. Usually not a good idea.
No.
Or you can say, okay, so what does that mean? And how do I go there? So when I do my workshops, I tell people you got to ask yourself several different questions on a strategic perspective. The first one is, what of the value that you're providing to your clients right now is going to get eroded by AI because they have access
Mm-hmm.
to AI, right? So let's
Yeah.
take your universe of legal universe, and let's look at it from a law firm perspective. Okay, how much of what a law firm does will be able to be done by clients themselves, just because there's going to be an AI law in a box that I can ask it questions and it can draft my documents and it can review it based on whatever bar in any state better than most lawyers. How much of the legal work that companies provide today will not be necessary? Or the other side of the question is, what percentage of my revenue right now as a law firm is paralegal work? And the number is probably different for every company, but let's say 20 to 30% of my revenue comes from billable hours of paralegals.
Right.
Nobody will be willing to pay that. Now they do, but in 3 years, are you kidding me? I'm not paying you 60 hours to do the research. I can do it in 35 seconds. I'll pay you 6 hours. So what
Yeah.
happens to the other 54 hours of paralegal work you were used to getting paid for this size of project? And now when poof, and they're gone.
Right.
So there's many aspects, and I'm not picking up on legal. The same is true across many, many,
Yeah.
many, many different businesses. And so you got to think on what of the value that you're providing right now and the way you're providing that value is going to get eroded because AI exists. The flip side is also true. You can ask yourself, what new products and services I can provide to my existing audience because I have access to AI. And before that, this new product or service, the ROI just wasn't there. Or the changes I had to make to my company to provide just were not within the scope of what I can do or want to do. But now, like, oh, now I can do this. Like, one person with these AI tools can do the stuff that I needed 25 or whatever, 5 people before to do.
Oh, absolutely.
And I'm like, okay, so now I can do this, and I can do this profitably. And the third question is, what new kinds of clients and sectors that I couldn't access before because I didn't have the bandwidth, I didn't have the knowledge, I didn't have the skills, I didn't have the tools, the ROI wasn't there, whatever the case may be, I can now address. And so if you do this now, you can come out ahead versus in 18 months say, holy crap, like I lost all my clients or I'm making a lot less money and so on, because you can complement that or replace that with new things that you can do. So when you're asking me like, okay, what's the biggest value that AI can provide to a business, is making the business survive. That's the biggest value that it can provide. And I think most people are not even thinking down that path. They're like, oh, how can I make my emails more efficient? Like, okay, cool, fine,
Yeah.
great. Is that going to dramatically impact the future of your business? The answer is no. but there are things that might, and you better start thinking about them now. So this is like my biggest thing. Now,
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go. I wanted. I
Oh
want to
yeah,
know.
no.
Like,
What I was going to say is one of the funniest clips I ever see, like on the internet, is the people at Good Morning America when they're like, "What's this internet thing?" And
yeah.
oh, it's not going to be anything. And so you don't want to be that person. Like
Yeah.
I think you need to experience AI, and that's interesting though too. I mean, I try to at least like once a month take like a half day or day to just think strategically about like what I'm doing, the business that I'm running, the podcast and all the different things, and how can I um, better, be better. Right. And, you can ask it things. It's interesting, and it kind of accelerates that brainstorming.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
another thing it really accelerates is like researching like properties, like, what's happening on this property, and then it can figure out the zoning. And it's pretty interesting. But yeah, I think digging your head into sand, but using it as a strategic partner, that's pretty interesting. I mean, yeah, you could have it reword some emails, but at the end of the day, is everybody like, well, that's the best email ever? No, they're just reading your email and then they're moving on.
Yeah. No, so then you asked about tactical things, like what are cool use cases and so on. And it's really all over the place. And I'll, instead of giving you just ideas, I'll give you examples from some of my clients on things how it can transform things that people are doing. So one of my clients, they're a large apparel company. I'm not going to name them, but everybody knows them. And they have, like any other apparel company, their supply chain is insane. Like, those of you who haven't been in this world and don't understand it, and I didn't until I now have 2 different clients that are big apparel companies.
Mm-hmm.
It's insane. So they get reports every single week from I don't know how many sources. So think about all the people who ship your stuff, all the different warehouses where it is all around the world, plus each and every one of the retailers, both online and brick and mortar ones, that sell your stuff. You get reports from each and every one of them on sales and on inventory levels. Each report comes in a different format, in a different cadence, and yet that's your business. Like, without knowing this, you're doomed.
Right.
And so they have a bunch of people, full-time job, that all they do is a lot of what they do is take the information that comes raw from different people in different formats and reformat it in a way that can then fit into reports, ERPs, blah, 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 so they can make decisions on the core of their business. What materials do they need? What products they need to make? Where do they need to ship them? What's the profitability level with that retailer versus that retailer? All of that stuff that is the core of their business. The only way to do this was to manually copy and paste day in, day out, or week in, week out, 60 different formats of reports that come in. And Walmart is not going to change the way they send reports because you don't like it. Like, this is the report Walmart sends, or Target, or Kohl's, or like, you name it, like any retailer out there. And so, huge amount of overhead just to know what's happening in the business. And very, very quickly, we wrote AI-assisted systems that cut that time by 20x. Some of it became fully automated, like, okay, if this and this and this, we now know how to do like that. It just happens. We don't need to do anything. And some of it still requires manual intervention, but it's significantly less than what it was before. And so it's these kind of things where it's that people and companies take for granted. This is part of how our business runs. It's a necessary evil, and there's no way around it. That's not true anymore. There's a lot of things that were not possible that are possible right now. Scheduling of meetings in doctors' offices or in any other place.
Yeah.
Right? Huge overhead. But in a doctor's office, it's, putting people in seats. Like, if you don't have the person sitting in front of the doctor, you're not making money.
Yeah.
So setting those meetings is everything. If you can reduce the friction of that, and people can talk to a person and at any time of day in any language, and this is connected to whatever mechanism you have in the back end to make sure that you don't have any conflicts, all day long. And there's AI tools today that do that perfectly well, better than most receptionists. And so why not put a system like that in place? So there's so many aspects of whether brick and mortar, digital, wholesale, B2B, B2C, like whatever universe, that the core of the business, forget about the fancy bells and whistles that AI knows how to do. The core of the business can change because there's AI assisting you in your biggest overheads or bottlenecks.
Do you know the biggest tool that's made the most profound difference to me is those note takers that you have on the meetings? Because
100%.
I mean, I take notes. It keeps me, I'm a little ADD, ADHD. And one thing, it just keeps me like focused, keeps me here, keeps me from thinking about anything else. But, I take notes, but sometimes I'm talking to someone and I'm discussing their problem and, how we're going to solve it and all those different things. And then I go back and look at the AI notes and I'm like, oh, I did not write that down. Oh yeah, I got to follow up on that item. I mean, I think if someone does not have an AI like Copilot, note, summarizer, I mean, that's super low hanging fruit.
I agree. I use them all the time. And by the way, I'm like you. I also take notes on my own, but I have the notes from the AI, the video from the AI. I think one of the coolest things with the AI note takers is that they give you the full context. Like sometimes I go into a meeting and the previous meeting was 3.5 months ago. I don't I took notes, but I'm like, oh, what the hell did I mean in that note?
Right.
And then you go to the note taker and you go to a similar section and you click it and it takes you to the video of that thing. And you can watch in 1.5 speed the last 3 minutes that led to that part of the conversation. Like, oh, okay. Now I remember what we were talking about and you have full clarity on that. And this is just, it's like a time machine, right? You can go back to a conversation you had 6 months ago and see exactly what was said and by who and what was the context of all of that, which your notes usually don't have that.
No, you're like looking at it and like, what's a small team of ninjas mean? If I look back at this, I look back at this 4 months from now, like, what was he talking about?
Yeah.
So, no, I think that's super low hanging fruit. And I do agree. I feel like I'm providing better services to those I serve and just being, or whether I'm on like a committee or a board, like you do, I feel like I'm better because I'm more prepared. And I think everyone's more prepared and more accountable. Like, well, I didn't say that I was going to do that. Well, yes, you did. The AI note taker said that you volunteered for that. So I think that's incredible. So I think to the tactical adding value versus coolness is something to think about. Like, I think coolness is like, I have a 3 and 5-year-old now and I can print out really cool coloring pages for them, but that is not bringing any value to my business whatsoever.
Yeah. Well, it does. It frees you for another 20 minutes to go back and work while they coloring the stuff you gave them.
That's true. That's okay. Yeah. Fair point.
Yeah.
So your main business, you have the podcast leveraging AI. Yeah. When did you launch the podcast? You started doing the consulting in April.
So either April or May of 2023, I launched the podcast. And it was actually really interesting. So I was podcasting. So until then, I was podcasting for probably about 3 years. So I had a different podcast that was called Business Growth Accelerator. And before that, I had a different podcast. And initially, I'm like, I really like Business Growth Accelerator. So I'm going to do both in parallel. And I kept going with Business Growth Accelerator and leveraging AI in parallel for about a month and a half, maybe 2. And then I just lost the passion to the Business Growth Accelerator. Like, I'm all in onto this AI thing. I'm really not enjoying doing the other thing. And it was really funny because I think I stopped at like 194 and 196 episodes. And people are like, go to 200 at least. I'm like, why? Like, what? Like, other than the fact, okay, I have, like, what's the point? So I literally stopped. So I stopped Business Growth Accelerator, started leveraging AI. Leveraging AI has been growing like crazy. Like, it's I can't even tell you how bigger it is than the other one was after 2 years. But it's very, very successful. It's growing every single week. And it's focusing on really the two things that I think people need to know when it comes to AI. One is weekly updates on news, but there's a lot of other podcasts that do this. So I basically go in and I curate what happened in the AI world this week, and I turn it into an episode for everybody to follow.
Oh,
To be
wow.
fair, not to quote for anybody, I do this for me. So in the beginning, I did not do that. In the beginning, I just did the other type of episodes. So there's 2 episodes every week. One is an interview with somebody who's an AI practitioner who shares exactly how they do something. So we take a use case and we show exactly how to do this. Moving the curtain and showing how the Wizard of Oz does his magic. That's what we do with like the best practitioners in the world. So that's every Tuesday. And every Saturday, I do the news. And the reason I started doing the news because I wanted to force myself to stay up to date. And it was very hard because you have a business and you have a lot of stuff happening and you have 3 kids and you're running around and you're like, I can't keep up with this. And I'm like, okay,
Right.
but if I have to record an episode once a week, I don't have a choice. I have to follow all the news. I have to summarize all the news and I have to know what's going on. I have to pick the most important stuff out of it so I know what's happening. So really it was done from a very selfish perspective, but there is a lot of people are interested in that as well. So now the podcast has really 2 episodes a week. One is very tactical and the other is very like, here's what's going on that you need to know in the AI world that can impact your business. It's always with like business people in mind. So that's the podcast, and it's been running for almost 2 years.
That's genius, though, too.
Thank you.
Have a
Whatever you want to say next, I'm done. Like if it's a genius, I'm good. I'll take the compliment.
like that. No, I think it's genius because, like, my personal branding coach, I was originally because I was kind of scared to do episodes more than every other week because my kids were really young when I started the podcast. You have to think they were 1 and 3 versus they're 3 and 5 now, and running company and all of that. I was like, this is way too much. But then you don't really grow your podcast until you like go weekly. But then if you go multiple times a week and you're delivering more output, that's great. And then also making yourself do what needs to be done. So you remain a subject matter expert rather than you. Otherwise, you'll probably you would just keep rehashing and, not learn. You might learn some, but you're really forcing yourself to do that.
Yeah, listen, most of my work is teaching AI courses and consulting to businesses. Like the podcast is just a means to share what I learn with others and to get people to understand that I know what I'm talking about versus just a pretty face. But yeah, the podcast is a great way to let people know. So I'll give you an example. I run the AI business transformation course, like I said, since April 2023, so almost 2 years as well. I run it at least once a month, sometimes twice.
Wow.
Most of these courses are privately booked. So like a company, a consortia, an organization, somebody will book me to teach them the course. And in many cases, more than one. They're like, oh, this was awesome. Can we do this again in 2 months? Because we have people who didn't take it and we want them to take the course. So there's groups that I've been doing this with for a year and a half and that have taken 4 or 5 courses with me. And so, but every now and then, when I have bandwidth, I will do a public course. And it ends up being about once a quarter, even though I never plan it this way. It's just the way it happens. And so when I don't have a course planned with anybody, I will open a course to the public. So we just started one in the beginning of February, middle of February. So we have 24 people, 3 from India, one or 2 from Emirates and Abu Dhabi, 1 from South Africa, 1 from the Netherlands, 1 from Ireland, and the rest are from the US, 1 of them from Hawaii. Now, wow. 95% of them came to the course because they listened to the podcast.
Right.
And so many of them are executives in significant sized businesses. And so the access that provides me, beyond the fact that I get to help a lot of people because I selflessly share everything that I'm learning and everything that a lot of other people are learning because I invite a new guest every week, pays off. So everybody wins, right? The audience wins because they get to learn about how to do stuff with AI from a very practical perspective. And I get exposure and people to know that I actually know what I'm talking about. So it's a great win-win.
It is. And I mean, and then those public may go to private, so I'm sure. So that's really Interesting. So do you have like a cadence to your week or your day of like how you accomplish this, or like different bookends? I always like to ask people like,
From a
how do
course
they do this stuff?
perspective, from a podcast
From
perspective.
like a personal perspective, do you have like any particular morning rituals, night rituals, or different things you do to accomplish this huge amount of work
So
that you're
not on
getting
a daily basis, but I have weekly rituals. Like
done? Oh,
there's
that's a good
things I
idea.
do on specific times of specific days. So I'm
Okay.
not one of those people who have, like, I do have a morning routine. I wake up, I go and wake up my kids, I make sandwiches to them, I prep them to school, I set up the whatever needs to be set up for them, and I send them off to school. That's my morning ritual. I
Yeah.
have 3 kids. And so, but I'm not one of those people that does anything like on a personal level every morning. But I do have segments blocked on my calendar over the week that are blocked just for these purposes. Like on Fridays, I have 2 hours of deep learning. Nothing else bothers that time frame where I go and I will take a new tool or a new process or something I want to explore, and I will go deep into that. I have a section where I do finance, because as a small business owner, that's one of the necessary evils that you have to do. So you got to go and look, okay, on this hour a week, you go and you check what's going on with your bank account and with your cash flow and with the invoices that you send out and with late payments and with blah, 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 credit cards, all the other stuff that you need to do as a small business owner. And so I have blocks through the week on the calendar. I do a live session every Thursday at noon that is basically an episode of my podcast, but it also goes live on LinkedIn. So that's every Thursday at noon. I have my community get together, which is called the Friday AI Hangouts, which happens every Friday at 1 p.m. So there's a bunch of stuff on the calendar that happens every single week that I stick to and not move, regardless of even if the world collapses. And then the other stuff kind of shifts around because it's all Calendly based and people can grab my time.
Right. Right. And then you're having to kind of like move things around as
Yeah.
it is. Yeah. No, I get it. Like I've tried to, a lot of people say, oh, you got to do this miracle morning or you have to do this. And I've just kind of found that like, I kind of just have to do how the flow is going. Like, if I get a workout in at 6 and I went to bed early enough to do that, that's great. If, and I can do it before I have to do my kids, great. If not, it's going to be 8, or if not, then let me try to take a break in the afternoon to kind of rev myself up a little bit.
The one thing I try to do 3 times a week in the mornings is play pickleball. That's kind of became my drug of choice. So
What is it again?
Pickleball.
Oh, pickleball, yes, because I was drinking out of the pickle you told me.
Yeah. So I play pickleball. I try 3 times a week. Sometimes I'm being twice, but that's like, usually about 7:30 to about 9:30 twice a week during the week, and then once during the weekend. And that's kind of how I get my my energy into the day. And then an ice bath. I don't know if you ever tried that.
I love ice baths.
Ridiculous. So yeah, so I always end up with like 2.5, 3 minutes in the ice bath, and then I go and start my day, and that keeps it going.
I wonder if we go to the same spot. So
I go to the RDV or whatever it's called right now. Genesis.
How do we not run into each other?
I don't know. Different hours, probably.
We must be like, I never go between like 7:30 and 9:30.
Yeah.
Like, I think
I'm usually out. Like by 10, I'm at home in front of my computer on those days.
Yeah. So when I usually go during the week, it's either like 9 or 3:30.
And I'm usually outside, right, playing pickleball. So I just walk through the gym to go to the ice bath.
We're gonna run into each other now.
Now we're like, hey, like how did this?
Hey, that's like
awareness is everything, right?
Yeah. So I think we've had a great conversation. I think it's really amazing what you're doing with AI, and I'd urge anyone to like check out your website and check out your podcast and all the things you're doing. Do you feel like there's anything you kind of wanted to chat about today? My listeners are primarily leaders, executives, a lot of people in like commercial real estate space, just people like wanting to work and get to like the next level. It's called, performance mindset. Is there anything else you feel like you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, I'll say something about the AI and running a business because, again, most of my clients are like that. I'll say 2 things. The 3 most important aspects of being successful in like an AI transformation one is leadership buy-in. That's the number one. If that's
Mm-hmm.
not there, not happening. So if you are at the top of the pyramid and you're like, well, I've got minions and they're going to figure it out, it's not going to happen. It's a
Oh my God.
strategic process that has to be led from
Mm-hmm.
the top. And yes, having people in the organization that are excited about it, that will help you kind of like grassroots develop is awesome. But without leadership buy-in and a strategic approach, it is going to fail. So that's number one. Two, it's about experimentation. Reading about the podcast is awesome. Again, people listen to the podcast, they love the podcast, watch YouTube, like great. Without actually trying it for things that you need. And beginning could be what you said, coloring books for the kids. Or I create, my son is really into like manga comics. We create manga comics. So we have one tool write the stories and then the other tool to create the actual images. And he really loves it. One of my sons developed he loves math and he gets a little bored with school math because it's not good enough for his level. So we develop a math game for him. So him and I wrote a game that he plays against the computer to do math. And he's learning AI this way. So it doesn't have to be work related, but I urge you to try doing stuff and eventually do work stuff as well. And the third thing, which is the most important thing, is education, and not just education, but continuous education. You have to find ways for you and your team to understand how this will impact your universe and how to apply it in your universe. And the only way to do this is to get somebody external who knows what they're doing to teach your board and then your leadership team and then the actual employees of the company on how to apply this across different aspects. And then you need to have people in the company to pick up the torch and keep running with it, because this doesn't stop. I do stuff every week that didn't exist the week before. Now, an average business cannot act at that speed, but
No.
you still need to be able to adapt once a quarter. Worst case scenario, once every 6 months. And you need to be able to educate your team, and you need to be able to know what's happening, and you need to be able to implement this into systems and processes, because at the end of the day, people need to use it. And so you have to A, start, and B, work through how do we build the right people, the right talent, the right systems, the right processes to create this motion forward with AI that is going to just continue moving forward as this moves forward. So these are my last 2 cents.
I would agree with that. I mean, there's the total ABC universe of AI. You know, you got Claude, you got Grok, you got Perplexity, you got this, you got that. And how in the world, if you're trying to run a business, delivering whatever service or product that you're trying to do, how are you going to know which ones are best versus like having someone who has the experience and, you know, wherewithal to kind of tell you, hey, well, you know, I've already test case with another person. You know, these 3 tools, if you weave them together, you don't even use this one, would be amazing for you. And, you know, how else are you supposed to know that versus, you know, trial and error. And then also the implementation rate could be so much slower. And in the meantime, your competitors are getting way ahead of you.
Yeah, 100%. I think there are several different kinds of fears that people have right now with AI. One is like, AI is going to take my job. The other is, AI is going to take over the world. And the third is, this is so overwhelming, I don't even know where to start, right? And so I always tell people, pick one tool. It doesn't matter. They're all way better than you think right now if you haven't played with them. And find a use case, one use case that's going to be helpful for you, and research how to do that. And there's gazillion people like me on the internet that share how to do things. And just find somebody, follow them and say, okay, how do I do this? And find 3 YouTube videos and learn how to do this one use case with one tool. And it doesn't matter whether you use Gemini or Claude or Perplexity or ChatGPT or DeepSeek or like, I don't care. Pick one, because all of them are going to really surprise you if you haven't done this before. And start there. And they're like, oh my God, this is cool. And the other thing, I'll say one more thing, which is I have kind of like the common mistakes that people make in my course. And one of those mistakes is giving up too early. People try twice. I'm like, okay, this is bullshit. Like, I don't understand what the excitement is. And they just leave it. And it takes time, like every other skill, like playing pickleball. You play pickleball the first time, you're going to suck. The first 5 times, you're going to be really bad. After 20 times, like, okay, I'm starting to get the hang of it. After 6 months, you're going to be, oh my God, I beat everybody around me, or most of them, at least most of the time. You didn't start that way, but if you gave up after twice of playing, you will never get to be the guy that beats everybody, or at least plays at everybody's level. And so you can't give up if you tried 2 or 3 things and say, okay, I'm too busy to do this. This is bullshit. I don't understand what's the big excitement is. So that's my last tip.
Yeah, and one thing is I've really tried to eradicate the busy word from the vocabulary, because I mean, anyone can say they're busy, but I only think you're busy if you're doing things you don't want to do. And I think using AI, using different things, you're creating control of your life, and maybe you just have so many things going on. But I think it's an excuse, and I think that we all have the same 168 hours in the week. And it's how you choose to deploy them and, attack each week. And so, so I think I agree. Don't give up too early. I did that way too much, in my younger years. When I was in school, it would bother me. But definitely as an adult, I'm like, no, I'm going to push through. Like I like to golf. I've learned piano in my 30s.
Yeah.
And those are things like I was awful at piano. Like who picks up and sounds like Beethoven the first time? Nobody. So you just got to do it. So.
I started playing bass at 50. So I know very, very personally what you mean by in the beginning, like, oh my God, this is horrible.
It makes me think of one person I really like to follow on Instagram is Jesse Isler. And he talks about just doing hard things. He's the guy with the big ass calendar and those kinds of things I just love. And I think of that sometimes if I'm really struggling with something. And so maybe if you're struggling with AI, whatever it is, remind yourself that doing that hard thing is really good for you.
Yeah.
So how do people get a hold of you?
Easiest thing is LinkedIn. So Isar Meitis. So I have to pronounce and spell my name every time I talk to people. So that's the disadvantage. So it's Isar is my first name, and it's pronounced Isar, and the last name is Meitis, like the month of May, but it's spelled Meitis. So I have to do that several times a day for my entire life. The good news is I'm the only Isar Meitis on LinkedIn. So there's a huge benefit, right? If you found...
you almost have 15,000 followers now.
Yeah. So, if you found me, that's me. And reach out to me over there. I chat on LinkedIn every single day. I more or less live in LinkedIn. It's open like as a side window for me, and I see what's happening. And if people reach out, I respond to them. And so that's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. If you just want to learn AI, the easiest way to get it for free is to go to the podcast. Like you said, it's called Leveraging AI. And if you want more structured training, we offer multiple aspects of that to individuals, businesses, and so on. So, but again, the easiest way, just reach out to me on LinkedIn or go to my website, multiply.ai, and it's multiplied spelled cool, or I thought it was cool when I got the domain. So instead of Y in the end, it's spelled with AI in the end. So
just like your shirt, you got shirt on.
Exactly, like on my shirt, multiplai.ai. So I thought, oh my God, that's such a cool name. And then I have to spell it every time. Like, well, was it not cool if I have to spell it every time somebody needs to know my business? But that's another way to kind of learn about what it is.
Well, awesome. This was so cool to reconnect. And I'm glad we've been friends all these years. And then who knew that we're going to the same place to hang out?
To work out.
The coolest people. So here we go. We'll be staying connected there. So thank you to everybody for tuning in to the latest episode of the Performance Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Amy Calandrino, and this is me signing off.
Thank you.